GOP presidential candidate Donald Trump sparked new outrage this week when he proposed to ban Muslims from entering the U.S. Colorado lawmakers from both sides joined the chorus, saying that Trump's statements were out of line, with Senator Cory Gardner going so far as to call him a buffoon. Patty, we've seen nonstop international and national coverage on Trump's comments. What I'm interested in is seeing the effect it's going to have on the Republican Party and just the election. I mean, he's a phenomenon. What he says just gets crazier and crazier. But in a purple state like Colorado, there's enough wiggle room here that something like this can make a difference. What do you think of the reaction so far?
It's been fascinating. I mean, who would have thought that Trump would be doing as well as he is now a year ago, that he would even still be in the game? You think about Sunday night when President Barack Obama, remember him? No one is talking about him now, made his speech on terrorism, and then all of a sudden the real explosion came with Trump's comments. Only Donald Trump could bring together Colorado's congressional delegation, they all agree. And not just Colorado's congressional delegation, but in fact the entire Middle East. He seems to have done the miraculous. He has them all, he has all those countries and factions agreeing. And ISIS agrees with him, which is really something. It's incredible. It is not going to die down. And for the Republican candidates, they really have to decide how to play this, because clearly it is playing well with a large percentage of Republican voters. As people are polling, his ratio is still going up. So the real thing to watch will be next week's debate on Tuesday night, and who asks what questions and where the candidates line up.
David, on the legal side of things, I'm imagining that any of Trump's proposals break a variety of parts of integral elements of our Constitution. So I don't even want to go that far of what he could actually do, but I guess, is the response also echoing whether it's an ignorance or a desire to ignore that part of the Constitution? If you see residents and citizens of the United States saying, yeah, we should do that too, thinking, wait a second, there's this whole thing called the Bill of Rights that would fly in the face of. Is it saying a lot about citizens seeing the reaction here?
Well, the power to exclude foreigners from coming into the country is close to absolute, and the legal scholars who've written about this said it's a bad idea. Probably legal as applied to foreigners. When he says American citizens who are Muslims who are overseas on vacation and then return home, we're not going to let them do that. Of course, that's plainly unconstitutional. In his 1987 book, The Art of the Deal, he talks about the use of hyperbole to generate earned media. So there's no reason to think that he particularly takes this idea any more seriously than all the other stuff he keeps throwing out, or that it'll be his idea 2 weeks from now. At one point he said we should stay out of Syria and just let the Russians take care of it, and then at the next debate we should bomb the expletive out of Syria. His positions are ever shifting, and as Patty said, draw earned media, and quite conveniently, from Mrs. Clinton's point of view, for whom I think he may well be part of the deep conspiracy, because when he does this, he draws attention away from the failure of the Obama-Clinton foreign policy as exemplified by the president's pathetic speech on Sunday. We are living in days in some ways similar to the final days of the old Roman Republic. Both parties have front runners who are quasi-fascist, and I don't mean like Hitler. I mean like Mussolini. He's the founding father of modern fascism. They're running against the First Amendment. Hillary Clinton said her litmus test for who gets on the Supreme Court is to overturn the decision which said you can't criminalize putting out a movie about Hillary Clinton. Trump says, when Rich Lowry of National Review calls Trump an ass on television, that the FCC should punish Lowry for saying so. They are both contemptuous of the Constitution, as fascism essentially is. They both promise massive strongman rule. Hillary's promises of what she's going to do by executive action go far beyond the many lawless actions of the Obama administration. She's going to double and triple down on that. And meanwhile, Trump yesterday said he's going to sign an executive order for an automatic death penalty for anybody who kills a police officer, which of course is something you could do if you're Juan Domingo Perón in Argentina in 1955, but you cannot do in a constitutional republic. So both front runners are enemies of the republic, and they are frontrunners because they've been allowed to be that, not just by the low-information voters, but by well-informed voters who are shockingly lining up behind these people.
Eric, I'm not sure if you had either Mussolini or Perón in your pool. They have historical references, but if you did, first of all, congratulations. But let's bring it back here to a local level. If you're thinking about running for U.S. Senate here in Colorado, if you're Mike Coffman and you're running in Congress, this is something that is going to affect the Republican Party, and you're probably going to be in a very tight race where a couple of percentage points could very well change the results. Are you worried about this? Are you trying to inoculate yourself? What do you do to react?
Every Republican, whether it's local, Colorado-based, or around the country, is perplexed and incredibly worried about this and somewhat paralyzed in terms of how to respond. You're in a bit of a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. All the focus last September was on the pledge Trump took not to run as a third-party candidate. Well, let's not forget, all these other people also took pledges to support the nominee of the party. And as Trump has become more irresponsible, unserious, outrageous, buffoon-like, whatever word, and we could go on, you want to use, all of those people, and down to the local level, the Mike Coffmans of the world, are being conflicted of how long, how do I keep my distance from this guy? Ultimately, how do I, if he should go and become a prospective nominee, how do I handle it then, et cetera. So they're damned if they do, they're damned if they don't. I have no idea if Trump is seriously considering a third-party run. I think that is well down the road. Right now, he's running for the Republican nomination, and he seems to be prospering there, although, albeit we haven't had a single voter actually speak up in Iowa, New Hampshire, or any place else yet, and that's still 45 or more days away. If he goes for a third-party nomination, he makes the impact that Ralph Nader had back in 2000 look minimal. Let's not forget that most people think Ralph Nader cost Al Gore the White House, but Trump would be a much more potent candidate, and it's hard to imagine any scenario other than that secures the election of the Democrat, presumably Hillary Clinton. I mean, David and Patty have said it, I'll be brief, but the irresponsibility, or I'll use a different word, the demagoguery of what Donald Trump is doing is shocking. It is reprehensible. I thought one of the stand-up moments of the week was Speaker Paul Ryan, and he had the best soundbite, 4 words: "This is not conservatism." Whether you come at this from a conservative point of view or a liberal point of view, this is fundamentally un-American. I happen to think it might preclude Donald Trump from ever taking the oath of office, because part of taking the oath is pledging to uphold the Constitution of the United States. And this is as blatantly unconstitutional as anything we've seen. Lastly, people need to start calling Ted Cruz to account for the little wink and nod game he's playing of not endorsing what Trump is saying, but winking and nodding at Trump's supporters that I'm really one of you, and when he implodes, I'm your guy.
Penn, we talked a lot about how Republicans are trying to respond and the trouble they're in. Are Democrats sitting back and smiling and enjoying the whole thing?
They may be, but I would tell them that that's a dangerous game to play. Donald Trump has come to exemplify the old maxim that truth is stranger than fiction. You can't make this junk up, some of the stuff he's saying and doing. But I think the problem is more serious than just Donald Trump saying outrageous stuff. And I agree with David. I think he says it for effect. I think he's a charlatan. I'm not convinced he believes half of what he says, but so long as he gets positive reinforcement by 35% of Republican primary voters, and mark my words, there are more people who agree with him than that. They're just afraid to admit it in public because they see how ridiculous and how scary and offensive he sounds. But what I think he's come to represent is, and it happens on both the left and the right, there is an absence of civility, moderation, and desire to work together. This is simply a ratcheting up of some of the brinksmanship and extremity. Well, you don't like what I agree with? Well, I'm going to shut down the government for 90 days. We've seen this escalate over a period of time. And it's having some other effects. I mean, I think part of why Carson is fading is because he started saying extreme stuff, thinking, well, if Trump can do it, I can do it. Well, it shows, no, you can't. You can't get away with it. I wrote down Ted Cruz before Eric said